So we'll continue with questions? Okay, thank you, panelists. Okay, so where was I? Oh, there you are, John. I think you were next.
Hi, Sean. Points have been made. Yeah, let's go over there. I appreciate a lot of the points today, and I really appreciate this forum and Alex and with the center. The education is so vital to see. Yeah, my point was that I see the effect of corporations right in our own community, all around us. You know, it's been hard in this community. I see a lot of what's going on with corporations, a lot of land that we can't get access to. And then the Express just shut down. So, you know, that's a loss of an independent business. I've seen independent business, small family business shut down directly because of corporations. And then people go and spend their money there. Like a lot of people in Nelson, and it's more conscious community than some, are very good corporate citizens and just line up and give our money to those corporations. Where we could vote very peacefully without a war, just as you said, by just consciously spending our money really locally, or by somebody that's making something or growing something locally. It just supports our own local economy, puts a dollar in somebody's pocket. That's it. Oh, and the other thing I was thinking of is that as a way to really get politicians to take responsibilities to ask them about their policy and look on their websites and see what kind of policy they have and say, where's your policy on this stuff? You know, and we should be, you know, in our politicians' face and appreciate the federal entity. They got the policy. It's right on their website. You go to other websites, there's not even any policy. So you've got to have, you know, write it down. What do you guys stand for? And then hold them to it. So that's
Thanks,
just
John. I'm going to move back to this side of the room. Beryl's been waiting patiently.
Good job, Kevin. Hey, everybody. So I'm Beryl Clayton, and I don't really have a question for the panel. I actually have a question for all of us. When I came here, I thought this is a great opportunity for people who care or are curious to get together and to get to know each other, and maybe to say, if I learned something today, what can I do with that? And I just keep hearing these threads around. Some of them are that we're the ones who need to make change, right? And absolutely, like every time that I'm not able to live up to my own ideals of what will further the hope that Mary Walsh is expressing and make it less likely that people are living in poverty and desperate. I have to look at the fact that yes, it is hard to live that, right, given this world. And the big question for me is, how did we get here? Like if Sweden is doing what it is, what's going on? That those of us who are in the room, a lot of us recognize each other, right? We've been doing this a long time. Some of you are new, you haven't been doing it. But I've set the guy in the yellow shirt, right? I've been one of the people who's been activist all my life, and I'm a nonviolent activist, and I've worked real hard not to make it be that someone's the enemy, but I do know that some of us have more direct impact of creating poverty and desperation than others. And most people are not deliberately trying to trash somebody or make someone's life harder. They're living their life. So I just want to, I'm not asking anyone to respond or tell me their opinion. I just hope anyone who wants to talk to me later, I'd love to start talking with others about how can we not persuade anybody, not make anybody else feel bad, but start to turn around an incredibly bad attitude that's been fed in the last 20, 30 years by the people with the money in the media. I'm not responsible for that, but I can. How can we start to make it be real on grassroots? That's for everyone. No answer.
Thanks, Carol.
Okay. I'll just turn it around so that I can be on too. And take it back a little bit. Just a second. And then we'll see what happens. Hi. I'm Marcia Brondy, and I'm another one of those activists for a very, very long time. In the 1990s, I participated in a process in this country that was all about, it began with Barbara McDougall's task forces on older workers, unemployed, social assistance recipients, apprenticeship, that, you know, each one had representation from which is how those things normally do. Business and labor sit across the table and talk about the people. But these actually had representation from women, visible minorities, and other people with disabilities, and Aboriginal people. That led into the development of the Canadian Labour Force Development Board, which was, again, had equity representation from education, because all of those groups of people have responsibility and opportunity to deal with labor market issues. It was very exciting. British Columbia and all across the country, each province formed provincial labor force development boards, and they had equity representation. Women, visible minorities, Aboriginal people, people who had real stake in the labor market. British Columbia, not really liking equity participation, was the first one to cancel their all of a sudden we woke up one morning and the BC Labour Force Development Board had been completely decimated and thrown out. Shortly thereafter, because business didn't like having to sit at the table with equity representation, the same thing happened to the Canadian Labour Force Development Board. And I really appreciate seeing in this film what they're doing in Sweden and recognizing that they are having real success with that model. And I'm sure that we, Canada, got it from them in the first place, but it was greed. It was corporate greed in this country that put a stop to that kind of collaborative, engaged participation. And I'm not sure what we do about that corporate greed. And I would be interested to hear what any of you have to say.
Thanks, Marsha.
Sorry, on a local level, I would say start unionizing the hotels here in Nelson. There's a really simple answer to developing unions. Every time the teachers have a zone gathering, we go to Cranbrook or to Kimberley, because Nelson doesn't have any unionized hotels for educators to come together and talk about social justice.
Well, I think in the past, in our history, companies have always wanted to make money, and in the past, the corporations want to make as much money as possible, and that's why they're there. But in the past, we have had governments and prime ministers and premiers of provinces who have been able to limit that, who have been able to, on our behalf, to put some checks and balances, of all governments of all political stripes. And right now, what I'm seeing in my 66 years, almost 66 years on this planet, is that we don't have that control anymore, that they seem to have more control. So I think what we have to do is somehow get the people who have the power on our behalf, because we elect them. We don't elect CEOs of corporations. So the people that we elect should stand up on our behalf and work cooperatively with these companies and with others to have a just society.
My name's Erin Harvey.
I'm old enough to remember when women were incredibly proud of the fact that they had been given the vote. I mean, I was born after they got the vote, but not much, I don't think. So I can honestly say that I have never, ever had any election, provincial, federal, or municipal, that I have not voted. Never. Even when I was too young to vote, I worked on political campaigns for the CCF, and that really dates me because I was NDP when the NDP was the CCF. So I have a long history of being concerned about politics and being involved to the level that I was able. And one of the things that I see that's happened is that there's a real sort of a lethargic attitude towards voting. I was mainstreaming with Cookie Evans a couple of elections ago, and we stopped on Baker Street with a group of young people. And we were sort of talking to them about getting out to vote. And the general response was, no point, why should I bother? And my response to them was, do you really want an old lady like me making decisions for you? And think about that, because if people don't go out and vote, make their decision to vote whichever way they choose, then don't complain if things don't go your way. Other people will do it, and maybe what's important to me is not going to be important to you. So get out there and make sure your voice is heard. The other thing that I think has happened is this incredible swing towards consumerism. I mean, we have all been turned into mindless consumers of having to have stuff that we don't need, planned obsolescence. I've got this I've had it for so long, throw it out. I need to get a new one. That's something we need to rethink. The other thing I think we need to rethink, and we can do something about the consumerism, it's in our power. The other thing we can do something about, which I do, and they love me at the grocery store. If I go into the overweight and I'm looking for carrots, and the only carrots they've got are grown in the US, they hear from me. I go to the nearest produce man, I take him by the arm and I say, excuse me, don't we grow carrots in Canada anymore? And he says, well, it's not my fault. I say, okay, fine, I'll go buy them somewhere else. And I do. Now I realize that's a very small, I'm just one person. But if we all did that, there would be that, if somebody is concerned about agriculture, there would be that, let's buy as locally as possible. I mean, it's within all of our power to do that. Say, no, if I have to go somewhere else, I will. But I want to buy stuff that's grown as locally as possible. So there's these small little bits and pieces that we can do, certainly around consumerism. Do we really need it? Why are we buying this? And then, of course, the idea of saying, I don't want to buy stuff that isn't made or grown locally, if it's possible for it to be made or grown locally. And that's a real challenge, often to buy stuff that is made even in Canada, never mind locally. But the other little thing that I was thinking about, my grandfather, who God knows how old he'd be if he was still alive, he was the youngest, he was the 13th of 16 children brought up in East Anglia in England. Very, very religious family, and he knew his Bible back and forth. Now, this is very appropriate, I'm in a church. There's somewhere in the Bible, there's a phrase that says, and I think this phrase is the mantra for the Conservative government, actually, and probably Gordon Campbell as well. To him that hath, it shall be given, and to him that hath not, shall be taken away even that which he hath. And when somebody made the point about when they do these austerities, it's always the poor so-and-so at the bottom of the heap who gets hit the hardest. And that's that total injustice that is sort of, we allow that to happen in our system. So I think we have to be looking at these small things where we can maybe make a difference and look first in the mirror at what we can do ourselves too. And vote. Get out and vote. Don't complain. Vote. Thank you.
My name's Ann Hardy. This is probably, like Alex, the 5th or 6th forum like this that I've been to, and I've been hearing some common threads throughout all of the forums, and I just want to respond to some of the comments that have been made so far, and hopefully you can correct about it. First of all, young gentleman there was saying, why do you have to make it a war, or why do you have to fight? And I just want to say that there's a lot of people who are suffering in poverty to whom it feels like a war, to whom it feels like there is a lot of violence perpetrated on them because of the lack of choices and the situations that they find themselves in. Someone else here said, I don't think the government is accountable, none of the elected people are accountable anymore. I would argue that, depending on what party you're in, but I do believe in proportional representation, and certainly there are parties that are elected that believe in that too, and I think it's something that we should look for and work for. But I also want to say that there's also a lack of corporate accountability, and that's maybe where we have to start looking at the laws in our land as well, in terms of what's happening with our money. How do we end up in this recession in the first place? There was a lot of lack of accountability there. A common thing that's happened in a lot of these forums so far is the idea of networking, and how you know, if you look back at what happened in Sweden, it all comes down to the fact that we have power. All of us have power, and when we get together, we really have power. And a lot of us are working in kind of our own issue silos, kind of. Partly because we're probably so overwhelmed, but there's, you know, the women's movement, the students' movement, the labor movement, there's community services, there's nonprofit housing services. And one of the things that was talked about in Castlegar last night was, you know, we're all doing all these things, but we don't hear about a lot of what's happening with each other. And yet we're all kind of bound up in this social and economic reality of what's happening in this country. And we need to start supporting each other more. And so what happened in Castlegar was that the Castlegar Social Planning Council put up their hand and said, well, we're kind of sponsoring tonight and we kind of feel a bit of a responsibility. So we'll act as a clearinghouse. And when you got actions in our community that you want others to know about, all you guys have to do is, women, is go sign on to this email and we'll let you know about it. So that's one way that people can start, you know, networking a bit together. And we all have lots to do, but sometimes there's issues that come up in our communities that we can support each other on. The example in Castlegar was, there used to be a Extra Foods there. It's now turned over to a No Frills store. That's the name of it. The workers there used to make $15 an hour. Now they're making $11 an hour with no benefits. Nobody knew about that until someone stood up who used to work there and say, hey, you should know this is happening. This is kind of what the film's talking about. And so the people sort of said, great, you know, like maybe we have to start writing our local, not only our local politicians or our federal or provincial, but at the same time copying the local newspaper saying, I just found out that, you know, these guys are only making $11 an hour, and I don't know if I'm going to shop there anymore, you know, like, or what's that? So these are ways that we can maybe support each other all in the work that we do and add to our sector's voices by having other sectors come in and say, hey, you know, we're concerned about this too. So I just want to just say, the other thing that came out was a lot of people are saying it's no use voting, we have to make our own sustainable communities here. And I think there's kind of like two prongs to what we can do. One is to make those communities, to make those choices about where you spend your dollars, if you're going to buy local, if you can support local organizations and things like that make our quality of life here better. But the other thing is you can run but you can't hide, and sooner or later, no matter what we do, we're going to end up against the hard reality of policies that affect us in either the corporate world or the political world. And so the other is that, yes, we have to get involved and vote. And any party is only as good as the people in it and who are involved. So you have to look at whether you've got some time to politically engage and push whatever party you're interested in into the kind of policies that you want and hold their feet to the fire about it. So, okay. So it does make a difference. Like, everything you do makes a difference, and it ripples through. And the more each of us do, the stronger the effect is. On the getting back to the sustainable community and how you spend your dollars and things, a lot of the corporations react as they do because they're a public listed company and they are answering to their shareholders. So think about, for those of you who have it, where your money is invested, and if your investments in those huge mutual funds that have all of these different kinds of investments, what their effect is of those investments, and maybe choose wisely as to what where you put your money and what effect it has on the communities where those businesses are operating. Where do you bank? Credit union or bank? All these things make a difference. So those are some of the personal choices we can make, and then also together some of the things we can do to make a difference.
We're now at 4:30. We had been scheduled till 4:45, And I noticed that we're losing quite a few of our folks. I know that it's getting close to the dinner hour and people are getting anxious to get home. So I'm going to turn it back to the panelists. I'm going to ask if any of you or all of you would like to make some quick closing statements, and then we'll wrap up.
Thanks, Deb. I just wanted to thank you personally for taking the time to moderate this. You did a great job. Thank you so much for doing it.
My pleasure.
I just wanted to do the same thing, basically thank everybody who's contributed to putting this together. Thank you, Alex, for taking the time to be here with us. And it's been a very interesting experience, and I hope we all go away with something that we can maybe use in the next few weeks.
Thank you very much to all of you, and I highly encourage you to get engaged, get curious, ask questions.
I would encourage people to visit POVNet. That's Bruce Seth Klein's poverty reduction plan. It's a really informative website. I would really encourage people to go to this gathering on February 11th, and Josh put this together, and a lot of Council Canadians have, and to look for an amazing report that summarizes what has happened for women in the last 2 years through the BC Labour Federation. There's a report that comes out every 2 years in the convention, and the women's report is very interesting look at all aspects of women's lives in BC. So that would be the Women's Report 2010 convention. And thank you for coming and caring.
Yes, thank you to all of you as well. And I just want to say that I feel very blessed to live in the community of Nelson, and it's incredible to see a community mobilize around a crisis like the fire that happened at the Kerr. And I think if we could sustain that level of mobilization on some of these issues and look at poverty as a crisis issue and figure out a way how we can sustain that level of mobilization, I think we could affect a lot of change. But I think we're doing it as well. So thank you to you all, and thank you for everyone who gets out there every day and tries to affect change in their community.
Oh, we have one last, okay. Did you have one last comment?
Real quick question to Alex. I remember a long time ago when they had the Senate subcommittee hearings that stopped the introduction of the bovine growth hormone into Canada's most supply. But now with the change to the Canadian Senate, do they still have these Senate subcommittee hearings?
Is the question, do they have them?
Yeah, do they have them, Alex?
Yes, they still do. They still do.
Thank you for that last question, and thank you everybody who stayed right to the end. I hope that you found this time together inspiring and motivational. I hope that you don't leave here depressed. I hope that you also know that you live in a really good community, that people do care, people do move together, and politicians here do respond. We respond to the best of our ability. We certainly aren't Toronto, we don't maybe have as much clout as the politicians from there, but when we go to the bigger centres and we interact with the higher levels of government, and when we have the opportunity to meet with corporations, we do speak about what issues are facing the people in our communities. Thank you very much. It was my privilege to moderate today, and have a great evening.